All right, folks, before we turn things over to two of our CCHI commissioners for the performance-based training, we'd like to give a few moments to our friends at interpretered.com. Before we do, I'd like to say a few things about interpretered.com. Interpretered.com began offering medical interpreter training in 2012, and the program is constantly evolving and constantly improving. Paying it forward is an important organizational goal. When thousands of refugees from Afghanistan arrived in the US, interpretered.com provided full scholarships for nearly 30 Afghan refugees around the country, and many of these recipients are active in interpreting today, supporting the ongoing needs of their communities, in addition to supporting themselves and supporting their families. InterpreterEd.com advocates aggressively for interpreters, for fair compensation, for better resources and working conditions, in addition to supporting quality-focused credentialing efforts. And CCHI is grateful for InterpreterEd.com's long-standing support. With that, I'm going to turn it over to InterpreterEd.com for a few words.
InterpreterEd.com, training for professional interpreters.
We are here at the last session of the summit, and we hope you have enjoyed so far. All of us at InterpreterEd.com are excited about the new CoreCHI performance credential, as it establishes a way forward, a way to validate the skills of interpreters in all language pairs. We salute everyone who was involved in bringing this new credential to the profession. All of you who spent countless hours thinking, debating, and planning. You and all interpreters are heroes. Giving of your time, managing through the motions of others, giving of yourself to enable others who seek care access that care more easily, to make the life and work of caregivers better, more productive, and more rewarding. On behalf of all of us at interpretered.com, thank you. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you so much, interpretered.com. Next up, I am thrilled to introduce two of our commissioners, Andrea Henry and Zoe Schutzman, for a performance-based training to help you prepare for the ETOE exam. I guarantee this is going to be a riveting session, so get yourselves comfortable. Zoe and Andrea, it's all yours.
Well, I want to say thank you. First of all, I hope everybody could hear me. Yes? Okay, but nobody could see me.
Yeah, where are you? There you are.
Here I am. Andrea?
Yes.
Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, wonderful. So, thank you guys all for being here and hanging in, all 568 of you. It's a pleasure to be here along with my colleague and partner in crime, so to speak, for this session, this segment, Andrea Henry. We are going to take a dive along with you into what we hope will be a fun and engaging last segment of today's exciting and really interesting and provoking day for all of you who have shared your Saturday with us. So with that in mind, I am going to start off by simply sharing with you what we have ready for you. And that will be setting, oops, let me make sure I have my, here we go. What we plan to do, which is first to set the stage based on what has come before, but in anticipation of what we will be doing with you, which is some cognitive skills practice and self-evaluation as well, because I believe very strongly that as trainers, and Andrea can speak to this in her own way as well, it's so important to be able to self-reflect on one's own performance. And so we'll be doing both today. And then, of course, as we build further into that, taking deeper and deeper dives, we will also wrap about and back to an idea about this continuum, this ongoing continuum of upward and onward, galactic in nature, as we speak to the launch of this amazing CoreCHI performance credential, where everybody is joining us in that boat towards the outer novas, if you will. That said, Andrea, would you like to speak to our objectives?
Yes, absolutely. So we want to start off with essentially giving you a sense of what it takes to do this test. And really, it's all about cognitive skills. We've talked about it quite a bit today, but what we're really looking at is cerebral processing, or your brain's skill in this matter that is very much predictive, regardless of it being English to English. It's very much predictive of success in the interpreting environment. We're going to stretch those muscles. We're going to give you an opportunity to practice and also do some self-evaluation. A few times people have mentioned practice makes perfect. I agree. Though I am a staff interpreter, I've been in the field for a while, but I've been doing frontline interpreting for maybe 2/3 of my career. So close to 20 years, I would say, for the interpreting. And there is never a day where I feel perfect. I have a tendency to do a lot of self-reflection anyway, but I think what's wonderful about recognizing who we are as professionals is we are no different than nurses and physicians and advanced practice professionals. We are all in the same boat. We're constantly polishing our skills. So I'd like you to think about it as practice makes progress. We have an opportunity to improve, but we're not necessarily always reaching for perfection. We're reaching for success. And we do want to make sure you know by the end of this that you've got this. There's an opportunity here for you to not only see that you've already, especially for those of you who have been interpreting already, you've got an opportunity to see how well this matches the cognitive skills that you've got. And for those of you who are new, we hope to help you fully get a chance to see how this test is so that you can take it. And then this quote is just wonderful. You know, we'll never know our full potential unless we push ourselves to find it. I think this new credential gives us in the field an opportunity to really have our field reach its potential, because we will be bringing all of you into the fold instead of it just being a group of a few languages, right? Those of us who can get tested represent a very, very small amount of those of you who are out there. And I, for one, am very excited, just like everyone else today, just very excited and extremely proud that we have this opportunity and that it's gone through such a rigorous scientific process, and that it will bring us forward. And I do just really quickly want to point out maybe a few languages. This by no means will represent all of us in the end, but besides those of us who are Spanish interpreters and Arabic and Mandarin and Vietnamese, and Korean, we've got the Sioux languages, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, we've got Somali, we've got Nepali, we've got the Mayan languages like Quechua and Quiche and Chu and Mam and Kanjival. We've got Portuguese, we've got Cantonese, Mandarin, I think I just repeated a couple there, French, Creole, Hmong, some of the Eskimo languages and our First Nation languages, Pashto, Urdu, Punjabi, Amharic, Twi, that's West African, Cambodian, Navajo, Swahili, Karen, Farsi. I do speak a little Farsi, Polish, Dutch, German, Yiddish, Hebrew, Burmese. There's so many. And those of you who are on right now, I want you to just take 1 second and pat yourself on the back for being here and for caring to push yourself forward in this field. As someone who loves this field and cares tremendously about interpreters, and the fact that we do need to raise our status, like Johanna mentioned, this is the first step, and it's an incredible step. I'm very proud.
Thank you so much for that, Andrea, because this is who you are, in essence, the spirit of what moves us forward all of us together. And along those lines as well, amazing combination of language pairs present here today and also beyond here today. For those who will be looking at this recording to hear about this later, I just wanted to take a moment and also ask a question, which I believe Natalia will be the one manning in the form of a poll. And the poll here is, please take a moment to share with us how many years you've been in this language industry in whatever capacity. It's interesting to see how many of these are newer or more seasoned in whatever capacity you started with and have come and evolved to, just to get an idea of how many of us are and have been in this industry. So we have very new individuals, new in the sense that they're within the first year of being language industry professionals. 2 to 5, okay. So many of, interesting that the largest group is 11 to 20. That's a nice chunk, almost half.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
that's incredible.
And then there's a little bit of which is great. We want those of you who are not part of the industry to find out about us and share it with us, become our advocates as well in different arenas. So thank you so much for that. I hope everybody did have a chance to respond, and if not, I'm also seeing in the chat. Wonderful. So this is who you are, and you're here with us together today. And as we now take our next plunge deeper into the pool, if you will, I am going to hand it over a little bit for Andrea to share where we're headed as we delve into our practice.
Yes, so the English to English testing process has, in total, it has 7 different sections. And in statistical terms, or especially in testing terms, or any kind of survey, you talk about it as a domain, but it's essentially just a fancy word for the different sections. So there are 7 different sections that were born out of that very robust process to find out what needs to be tested in order to predict somebody's interpreting skills. And so the 7 include the 4 that you're looking at. So shadowing, which is essentially what it sounds like. You're right behind the speaker, just like a shadow. And you're saying it in English and repeating it right behind them with a little bit of a decollage, another jargon word, just a little bit of space. And then also listening comprehension is another domain or another area that's tested. And that is listening to information and proving that you understood it. And then memory capacity is the opportunity to show that you can hear something, retain it, and then restate it or repeat it, essentially. And then restating the meeting is paraphrasing, which is something we say quite a bit when we're talking about, not having repeated somebody's presentation perfectly, but you've paraphrased it, by getting at the key points. And so those are the 4 that we're going to practice with you today, but there are 3 more on the testing process that include equivalence of meaning, reading comprehension, so a lot like listening comprehension, but you're actually reading a script, and then a speaking skill in your language other than English or your languages. Some of you speak more than 2 languages, and so that will give you an opportunity to prove your proficiency in that language, in addition to the proficiency test that is part of this process. So today we're just going to do those 4.
And just about that last one, this is also part of an ongoing effort by CCHI to build a database of source content in those other languages so that they can. We talked about training and with the trainers panel, how are we continuing to build resources for those of us coming into this profession so that they could continue to evolve and be all that they can be as trainers. So that's actually an aspect of this exam that is continuing to help to develop what it is that we need to be able to focus on and have available to us as trainers in helping our trainees become those exceptional interpreters that they have all the potential to become. So with that said, I'm going to ask people, and this is just a suggestion, but I encourage everyone to really take it to heart. And I know everybody must have some kind of mobile device that they use to connect, and turn to that now. And if you have on that device a recording app, get it set up and ready, so that as we do these practice activities, you actually are able to record yourself. Because what's going to happen with these activities is that everybody, of course, is on mute. So it's just you, yourself, and your other self in your vacuum of space, being able to record how it goes for you with each practice that we do together. And so then afterwards, you will be able to listen, as well as have it as a takeaway so that you could revisit it later as well. And so not a requirement, but I certainly encourage you to take this opportunity to do this. In my trainings, oftentimes, because trainees can be very self-conscious, I start out by saying it's not required and it's just encouraged. And as I delve into further in the training and people have built trust with each other, then it becomes something that I want to reinforce more, because it's all about being able to self-reflect initially on your perceptions of how you did, but then having actual documentation of how you did, so that you could do a deeper self-analysis afterwards. So with that in mind, I hope everybody has had a chance to pull whatever it is out that they're going to use. Yeah. And what we are going to do is we're going to start off with that very first activity, which is in the domain of shadowing. And I must confess that this is probably my most favorite activity ever. I use this. Yes, I love it because I get to warm up. I guess just to get those juices flowing, stretch my brain. I mean, this is a muscle, guys. Remember, this is very physical. This is stretching physically your muscle, that is your brain, in terms of its cognitive capability. And warming it up first is a wonderful way to get yourselves in what I like to call the zone. And what does it mean, though, to shadow? I know that Andrea mentioned it initially, but I'm going to give you the opportunity to look at what this is. The idea of what shadowing is to follow closely behind it. Guess what? It is a way to also get ready to be able to do simultaneous interpreting, which is following closely behind. But we're not interpreting. These are all cognitive skills that we're tapping into. So there's no actual interpreting happening here. You're going to strictly listen to an English audio prompt, which I will be providing. And then you're going to repeat exactly what you hear in the same language, so in English, verbatim. This is, in this case, it is word for word, and you're going to try not to omit anything, not leave anything out, not to add anything, or for that matter, not to change anything. Why do we do this? Why is this one of those activities, domains that is covered in the exam? Because it's a way of demonstrating your ability to focus as an interpreter, or an interpreter to be. It's also a way to see whether you actually understand that speech in English, which, if you're interpreting, is your source in one case versus your other source or target. And it's also an opportunity to see if you're able to repeat it in that same language with focused attention to accuracy. I'm going to play this audio recording. Everybody should be able to hear it. So I'm going to play it at the very beginning. I suggest sometimes, especially for this kind of activity, because we're talking about focus, close your eyes. That
good
helps
idea.
me sometimes because it's really your source is the audio. You don't actually need to see anything to be able to repeat what you're hearing. You just need to be able to hear it, which is why I want to make sure everybody could actually hear it. So I'm going to take a quick start and stop, and then we will continue.
The test result of your stool shows that you're infected with a type of bacteria.
So now let's all either close our eyes, do whatever we have to do. I talk about focusing yourself physically as well. That's something that I practice when I am doing this. And let's all take a stab on it. Remember, you're just repeating exactly what you hear, and you don't leave anything out.
And then don't forget to hit record.
Yes, please.
You'll get to evaluate yourself afterward. So this is all individual work.
The test result of your stool shows that you're infected with a type of bacteria. It's called H. pylori. These bacteria are commonly transmitted person to person through your saliva. The bacteria can also be spread through fecal contamination of food or water. These bacteria live in your digestive tract, they damage your stomach lining, and they cause ulcers. So I will prescribe for you 2 types of antibiotics to get rid of the bacteria and an acid suppressant to help your stomach lining heal. You take 1 acid suppressant tablet daily before a meal, and each antibiotic you'll take 4 times a day with food. The pharmacist will go through the dosage again and clarify everything for you. Just take your antibiotics regularly and take them as prescribed, and do not stop taking them before finishing them. If you stop taking the antibiotics before you finish them, it might make this bacteria more resistant and harder to treat. If the medication bothers you, set up an appointment with us. We can discuss an alternative treatment plan. And I'll have your stool examined 1 more time after you finish this course of medication. I just want to make sure the bacteria are gone.
Here we go. So now that everybody has had a chance to do it and record it, I hope themselves, let's look at what that actually was. And let's take a moment. You can listen back to it. Think about what you found yourself, sort of challenged by, if you will, because this is an actual text, the script of, in fact, what you heard. And what I'd like to ask you to think about, if you're listening to your own recording, did you find yourself at any point adding anything or skipping anything? Did you find yourself switching things out? I mean, we're all in English here, but, sort of maybe that exact wording that you mentioned, you heard it, you skipped it, but then you wanted to fill it in so that you weren't omitting. So you chose another equivalent, perhaps. Did it flow awkwardly for you, or were you feeling like the rhythm worked because the pace was okay for you? There are speakers who will speak a lot faster than Andrea Henry, and then there will be those who slow down. So this is an opportunity to think about how the rhythm of this worked for you as you were strictly shadowing it.
And Zoe, it looks like people in the chat, a few people had asked if they could have a minute to just listen to their recording. And
let's
compare
do
it up
that.
Against. Yes, let's take a couple of minutes.
Let's take a couple of minutes. We're going to put on a timer now, because absolutely that's an opportunity that we want to take here now. Remember, this is for those of you who have your recording. You're going to be able to go back and listen to just the flow of it. How did it feel? Like if somebody would have listened to you saying what you were saying in English, would it be clear? Would there be a flow that they could understand? I'm noticing from the actual, and thank you so much for your comments.
Yeah.
That they're, they're switching out a little. They're not realizing that it wasn't consecutive. Yes, this was about repeating directly after. And the beauty of this is typically what will warm you up to be able to then do simultaneous. And that is why it's such great practice in terms of focus, which works for the simultaneous as well as the consecutive. But in this case, clearly that spacing behind, knowing how far behind you can be before you lose the thread, so to speak, is such a great skill to be developing, and shadowing gives you the opportunity to do that.
Well, I love the fact that hearing the audio and interpreting caused an auditory disruption, like trying to listen and talk at the same time. That is one of the challenges of doing simultaneous. So this shadowing exercise is a cognitive skill that is very much predictive of or simultaneous skills, but it does require you to really think about how to modulate or work with your own voice so that you're able to still hear. But I'm glad that it was mentioned. I think Vanessa Costa, one of our commissioners, mentioned that she went ahead and whispered to do it. So that's good. And just so you know, I think it's okay for Zoe and I to share with you. We'll give you another chance to do a shadowing exercise before the end of the practice session. Just so you get a chance to try it again. For those of you that weren't able to follow along and were thinking it was consecutive, we apologize for that. And then I think, people mentioned I missed a few words or maybe missed something that threw you off, which happens to me in both languages as an interpreter. And like I mentioned, I interpret every day, 4 days a week. I'm full-time, and there are days where someone says something in English or in Spanish and I'm not sure what they just said, and I lose the whole sentence just because of the word itself, because I'm unfamiliar with it, or the way they said it. So the fact that you noticed that you missed a few words is exactly why we're doing this. Just to show you the skill that it takes, and also to reflect on how to get better. And especially like Zoe was asking, what did you notice about what you did? And is it possible for you to notice patterns? Because we all have our weak spots and they're different. For me, I have weak spots that are probably different than Zoe's. And so it's good to notice these things.
Not only that, now we're doing this all in English, but I encourage you to do it in your other working language, because that too is continuing to develop that muscle in that other working language that you have. So that is also where you can notice how will your pattern be different if you were doing this in Somali to Somali. So I think this would work for any language that you find yourself, you work in as an interpreter. So I'm going to now turn it over to the next domain, and Andrea to take it away.
All right. So I want to share something really quickly. Zoe and I met in 2019 in California at a CHIA conference, and Zoe gave me feedback that I had never gotten before, and I think it's really relevant. And Zoe doesn't know that I was going to do this. I didn't know I was going to do this. It just hit me that it's kind of ironic that when you reflect on your practice, whether or not it's your interpreting practice, or in this case, it was a presentation, but when somebody gives you feedback, or you reflect on your own work and you give yourself feedback, it's hugely important for your growth. And it's a beautiful thing, especially if you love your work. And the feedback she gave me, she was very exciting to meet. I'm thrilled that we're still friends and now we're fellow commissioners, but she's as nerdy as I am about interpreting. But she gave me feedback, and I'm hoping that by the end of this presentation that you might notice that I followed her feedback, and I'll let you know what that feedback was at the end so that you can at least agree or disagree or something. So anyway, I'm extremely appreciative of it. And it's kind of fun that we're now presenting together. So for this next section, so this is another one of the 7 domains or the 7 sections that the performance test is evaluating you on. And this is your ability to listen to information and understand it. So you listen to a short speech or a short utterance. You can use that word too if you like, in English. And again, you're just listening in English, and then you're going to state in your own words the key points, like the most important part about it. And again, this is an opportunity for you to prove that cognitive skill, to listen to information and to be able to repeat it and the most important parts, but not repeat it verbatim. You're certainly not interpreting, so you're not going from English into your other languages. You're just going to do it in English, and you're just going to demonstrate that you understood what was said by a provider on a particular healthcare topic, and then identify afterward the key points of the speech. And we'll do the same thing. We're going to play the recording. And then you're going to listen to it. We'll give you that time on your own, in your own space, to listen to the recording. And we separated it into 3 chunks. You'll listen to that first chunk. The best thing would be to go ahead and use your recorder, since we told you to get the recorder. Go ahead and just state what the key points were of that first recording, and then we'll check in with you. We'll see how you're doing. And then we'll go ahead and do the second recording while you're listening, and then you'll be done listening and you'll state in your device while you're recording yourself what the key points were. And then we'll do it again with the third one. And then on the next slide, you'll get to see what was said, and then you can compare it up against what you recorded yourself saying afterward. So you're going to listen, and then you're going to record yourself on your own, just stating what the key points were. And essentially, you're going to get an opportunity to just prove that you're listening and you're attentive. Like Zoe had mentioned, all of this, and it's incredible what an interpreter's brain can do. But your attention is your most valuable asset. It is the most incredible part of interpreting. You have got to pay attention. And that's what you're really doing, is you're listening. And then you're going to go ahead and just state the key points in your own recording. So let's go ahead and get started.
And just so that we understand, can you just explain what you mean by key points, Andrea?
Yes.
For us.
Yes. So like the parts, and when you think about the environment in which we're doing our interpreting, which is very distinct from the courtroom, it's very distinct from when we do conference. So we're in a healthcare environment. And the key points are the parts of what was stated that are the most important. The key parts of that statement. And I guess I could give you an example, just of myself. And I could share, for example, say I'm a patient and I say, listen, I'm not here because I have any swelling. I'm actually here because I'd like to change my immunosuppressant. My rheumatoid arthritis is not under control in general, and I'd like to see if we could change it. And so, the key points in there are that I really want, as a patient, to change my medication or my immunosuppressant. And so in your recording, you can state it in the third person. Again, this is not interpreting, but it's testing the same cognitive skill. And so you could say, let's see, Andrea said she would like to change her medication. She doesn't have any symptoms right now, but it's not under control with the current immunosuppressant she's taking. So I essentially kind of restated the key points.
Thank you.
You haven't yeah. Is there anything you can add to that? And that's a true story, by the way. Although I don't want to change my immunosuppressant, but I do have rheumatoid arthritis.
No, that was very well put. Great example. So thank you. All right. So everybody, here we go. Focus, listen.
I'm prescribing an antidepressant for you as part of your treatment plan. Antidepressants work by balancing chemicals in your brain that affect mood and emotions. These depression medicines can help improve your mood, they can help you sleep better, and they can increase your appetite and improve your concentration.
Let's move on. to the next one?
Yes. So we're going to do the
Website
exact
paper?
same thing. Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and press the second part. So it's related. So this is the same healthcare encounter, and it's the same speech in a sense. And so you can listen to it, and you could either, again, take notes while you're listening, like you would be if you think about this from an interpreting standpoint. This is, within that realm. Obviously, we're testing the same cognitive skill, but go ahead and do whatever you need to do to remember the key points, and then go ahead and record it afterwards. So you can either take notes, or like Alegna said from Boston, that it was easier for her to just record what she remembered as the key points. And they can be bullets. They don't need to be, full sentences, and it could be in the third person.
Hopefully, you'll be able to start doing the things you enjoy again, like hiking and riding a bike. While many people find that antidepressants work well to help reduce the symptoms of depression, you might not feel better right away. It usually takes at least 3 to 4 weeks before you notice a change in your mood. We may need to adjust the dose. It's important not to skip the medicine. Taking the medicine every day helps increase the chances that it'll work. And you have to be patient. It can take a few weeks before you start to feel better. It's important to hang in there.
This part, and someone did ask about note taking. Yes, you can absolutely take notes. Now, think about how you experienced that, and take a look at the text and listen to your recording. So you could kind of do it in two parts if you like, before you look at the text, and at the same time listen to your recording for the 3 different sections. You can also share in the chat how it felt or how you experienced it before you even look at your accuracy. Several people said this was easier than the shadowing cognitive skill. Some people actually also did say it was a little tough, but think about how it was for you, and you can share that in the chat. And then I'm going to be quiet again for a couple minutes so that you can compare your recording of yourself, of what you shared in terms of the key points, and look at the text where the underlined part is. Those are the most important parts that you should have been able to repeat. So again, you didn't have to repeat it word for word, but you're gleaning, or you're pulling out from it what matters most from a healthcare standpoint. Wonderful. So there's a lot of people that expressed that they missed a word, or they misstated a word. I think somebody said something about an antibiotic, hard to engage without context. Very good point. What is most amazing about healthcare interpreters, and what we don't get credit for, but I'm hoping we are moving into the future with this process and this new credential, but they don't often realize how much context is needed, which means we need to predict what we're going to be interpreting for, which means we need to know the specialty, what the goal is for the provider. All those things make our job a lot more successful, and unfortunately they don't get that. But somebody's point about without context is a very good point. The job of the healthcare interpreter is pretty impressive. We do everything without any awareness beforehand. Whereas when we do conference interpreting, we get the materials ahead of time. So we know exactly what the speaker is going to say most of the time. So healthcare interpreters really are incredible professionals who merit a much higher status, like Johanna has mentioned, and certainly better working conditions as well. So
And
do
there was
you
one
see anything
person,
in there?
I did notice that one person mentioned the fact that they do some research in it before they meet with the client. So if there is a way to do that, it's always, of course, better to feel to the degree that you can prepare, even in a general way. If you're aware of what you're walking into on some level, it's always going to be helpful. Absolutely, because of this predictive nature of what we need to be able to then perform in our interpreting. So definitely.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the feedback from all of the attendees that are putting information in the chat. It's very, very helpful to know how you're experiencing this. Okay, so I think we're on to the next one, Zoe.
Yes, so the third domain is memory capacity. And as we all know, our short-term memory, along with our focus, is really something that we are going to always want to continue to hone, to develop, to grow. And the next round of there are also another 3 recordings are going to give you a chance to, in fact, work your memory capacity muscle. And you'll notice that with each one of these domains, we're trying to help you to structure the activity so that you're tackling one specific aspect of your cognitive skill, which is why we're doing it all in English. Same way that you could be all doing it in your other working language. So it's about, that's how we talk in terms of sub-skill, cognitive skill. And for the longer training programs that the panel of trainers were referring to, in many ways, having the opportunity to do this is so empowering to the individual before they even start to interpret. And even as you are interpreting, continuing to come back to this is very empowering as well. You're kind of checking in with yourself. So with that in mind, I'm just going to share with you what we are going to be doing with these memory capacity activities. And again, the purpose being to demonstrate your understanding, your comprehension of this oral message in English, and seeing how long you are able to repeat in English that message. So each segment is going to be slightly longer than the previous one. So we're building that out. We're stretching that muscle that you have in your short-term memory capacity. We'll listen to that English audio first, and then repeat that message exactly as you heard it. In this case, therefore, it's not about following along and repeating. It's literally listening to it and then repeating it to the best of your ability in terms of, as accurately as possible without leaving anything out, adding anything in, or changing anything. So when you think consecutive, it's because you're waiting for the full stretch, and then you're going to repeat it. In this case, in the same language, which is English. So with that in mind, I'm now going to play the first audio. Again, it's an opportunity for you to record yourselves and see how you do when it comes to your short-term memory.
Listen to it and then immediately hit record on their device and record it. Okay, so this is most similar from a cognitive skill standpoint to consecutive. And like one of the attendees mentioned, memory is a struggle for us. So this is going to be them essentially saying everything after they've just heard it.
That's exactly right. And the reason why everything without omitting, adding, changing, because it's in English and it's going to be in English, you are, that's why you're repeating. So unlike if you were actually interpreting, it would be into your other language. This is strictly English into English.
And note taking is allowed. Somebody's asking.
Note
yes.
taking is allowed. We'll do one chunk of it at a time, as you can see. We'll give you a few minutes to record yourselves. We'll then immediately continue on to the next one. We'll give you a few minutes to record yourselves, and we'll finish up with the last one. Give yourself a few minutes, and then we'll do our let's see how we did debrief afterwards. So we will be sharing with you the actual script so that you could then look at it as well. Here we go.
Chronic hepatitis C is the leading cause of cirrhosis, liver failure, and cancer. Rectal bleeding is never normal. And while it may come from a relatively benign cause like hemorrhoids, more serious causes can be life-threatening. He wakes me up at night with his loud gasping for breath and jerking of his body. Is it because of his sleep apnea? Something's blocking his airway, making it harder for him to pull air into his lungs. Is that right?
So what's interesting about this progression, it's about building it up and knowing where you are. So always pushing that envelope, coming back to your baseline. And that is a good way to check in with yourself. And now that you have a recording of it as well, you could make sure that what you perceived as where your challenge was, whether that was in fact the challenge for you or not. So now you see it's an opportunity for you to listen to your own recording and check in with self. And these are your 3 scripts. So did you miss what you missed? Did you add what you added? Did you change, if anything? And why? And also, you know, the techniques of Ricardo, I think, was the one who talked to the idea of it, visualizing what you're hearing. That is a wonderful strategy. Absolutely. The note taking, of course, is that other strategy that we use extensively. Counting out, if you have more than one thing that you're trying to keep track of, is always a wonderful way, even in this English to English setting. Knowing the topic before being more familiar with it is always going to be helpful as well, because that's where the predictive skill that we've honed and developed comes into play.
If you notice a pattern with yourself, like when it's words you don't know, very logical. Everybody, doesn't matter what language they speak, they have a hard time repeating words that are foreign or different, like they've never heard them before in their own language. Very logical. Lists, if you're not a note taker, but you want to be a note taker, you might first start with lists. Like the first one that, the first script had a list of three conditions: cirrhosis, liver failure, and cancer. So you might write C, L, and C to try to refresh your memory. Cirrhosis, liver failure, cancer. It doesn't have to be the whole word. But another pattern that happens with us with consecutive interpreting, which this particular part of the test is very much predictive of because it's short-term memory, it's going to be the last part. So if you're going to miss anything, it's most likely going to be that last sentence. If somebody utters 3 sentences or 4 sentences or 1 sentence with a list of 5 items, if you're going to miss anything, most of us will miss the last thing. So if you keep that in mind, it might help you with the test, just thinking, okay, if I don't know it, I'm going to struggle with it. So try to beef up on all of your vocabulary in English. And also think about your short-term memory. It's an extremely important cognitive skill and cognitive and consecutive. And you'll notice there's patterns with most of us. We miss proper names, we miss amounts, and we miss the final part. So this is the cognitive skill that is related to paraphrasing. So paraphrasing is essentially expressing the meaning or what somebody has said, but with different words. And it's a beautiful thing because you get to use your own words, but essentially say the same thing. And so you're going to get a chance to listen to the English audio and then essentially restate it, but using different words or the words you would like to use, which is an advantage because you get to listen to something with the intention of stating it the way you really want to state it with your chosen words. And it's proving that you can listen to a message, understand it, and then restate it or paraphrase it accurately in English without changing the message, without adding words or concepts that weren't there, or without omitting concepts or words that weren't there or that were there, excuse me, and essentially not changing the meaning. So let's go ahead and listen to, so we put this into 3 different recordings again, and they're roughly a couple sentences each. But you're gonna, again, do whatever technique works for you. Some of you I noticed in the chat are note takers. Some of you are more auditory listeners. So whichever works for you, you can do. We'll let you listen to it. We'll stay quiet after it's done while you're recording the rephrasing or the restating the meaning. And then we'll move on to the second one. So we'll go ahead and get started.
There are 3 key factors that would increase a person's likelihood for addiction. They are genetics, the person's underlying psychiatric history, and their social environment.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the second one.
She's been so congested since yesterday that she can hardly breathe, not to mention sleep. She keeps complaining that her lips are dry, her throat is scratchy, and she has a horrible taste in her mouth. The throbbing headache you described is a migraine. Common triggers may include fluctuations in your level of estrogen, missing sleep or sleeping too much, physical exertion, some foods, some drinks, and of course, stress.
Okay, so now what you can do is you can share in the chat before you listen to your recording if you like, just in terms of how you experienced it, regardless of your confirming your accuracy. But you can share that, and then you can go ahead and we'll pause for a few seconds or a few minutes for you to listen to your recording and then compare it up against the text. And all 3 sections are up there on that slide. And again, you're looking to see if you were able to capture that in your own words without missing the key parts. Okay, we've got a bit challenging, harder to paraphrase, but paraphrasing is something as, even if you change a word, as opposed to saying likelihood for addiction, a paraphrase even of that small phrase would be, this person might be more likely to get addicted as opposed to likelihood for addiction.
That's where, and somebody, the idea of synonyms and building up your synonyms is something that's really wonderful for the purposes of being able to paraphrase. So being able to switch out with descriptors. Synonyms are not necessarily exactly the same, but as close as they could get to the exact concept if you don't have a short descriptor to, switch it out with. That's another aspect of this. It helps you to build that.
But we wanted to practice really quick the shadowing exercise one more time before we start to wrap it up.
Yes, as a cool down, I use it for warming up and for cooling down, and it just gives you an idea of how much I love this particular activity. So I'm
Yes,
going
me
to
too.
let you guys run with this now that you're all warmed up and now you're in the process of starting to cool down. Again, this is about following along, so not pausing, but repeating closely behind in the same language in English what it is that you hear, and not adding, not leaving anything out, and not changing anything. Here we go.
The test result of your stool shows that you're infected with a type of bacteria. It's called H. pylori. These bacteria are commonly transmitted person to person through your saliva. The bacteria can also be spread through fecal contamination of food or water. These bacteria live in your digestive tract, they damage your stomach lining, and they cause ulcers. So I will prescribe for you 2 types of antibiotics to get rid of the bacteria and an acid suppressant to help your stomach lining heal. You take 1 acid suppressant tablet daily before a meal, and each antibiotic you'll take 4 times a day with food. The pharmacist will go through the dosage again and clarify everything for you. Just take your antibiotics regularly and take them as prescribed, and do not stop taking them before finishing them. If you stop taking the antibiotics before you finish them, it might make this bacteria more resistant and harder to treat. If the medication bothers you, set up an appointment with us. We can discuss an alternative treatment plan. And I'll have your stool examined 1 more time after you finish this course of medication. I just want to make sure the bacteria are gone.
I hope everybody had a chance to enjoy that looping back experience to shadowing. And this was now the second time you heard it. So Did you notice
Mhm.
anything differently about how you felt about doing it? You could add your comments in the chat.
Way better, much easier.
Okay.
And it, it does kind of prove the cognitive skill that it takes to do simultaneous. It's an auditory challenge, assuming you don't have equipment. But the key is really knowing the material. So just like with interpreting, we need to be familiar with the material that we're going to be working with, especially when it's simultaneous. For the test itself, which is testing that same cognitive skill, you're going to do really well if you're familiar with a lot of these medical concepts. So I would definitely encourage you to do a lot of practice with just anything and everything that's medical. And Zoe is going to share in the chat the Medline Plus video page. You can listen to 1-minute videos that are in English, and you can go ahead and practice your shadowing skill with that. You can also practice every single one of the other cognitive skills that we did as well on Medline Plus. But should I go ahead and get into the quote now?
Please
So,
do.
yeah,
Yes.
okay. So this is a wonderful quote. I think it fits just absolutely perfectly with what we're trying to achieve today, which is to share with the field. And there's 565 people still on. I think that's amazing. I'm really proud to be a part of this. And I think we have this opportunity to use this innovative and very novel game-changing test to include every single one of you, which is so incredible to me. And it's just going to boost our professional credibility, and it's going to differentiate us. And kind of like Paco had said, it's going to level the playing field for all interpreters, for all the various languages that you speak, including sign language, to give you that extra credential in addition to your RID. But this quote, think big and don't listen to people who think it can't be done. Life is too short to think small. And I think just from the standpoint, they don't often think, people don't think that things are possible sometimes, but we do at CCHI. This new credentialing process is testament to that. CCHI has spent many years working to create a scientifically valid testing process. The development and validation process has been robust and has yielded an exam that is valid and accurately predicts interpreting skills by demonstrating the same cognitive processes required to interpret. And you get to be a part of this momentous time. Thank you. And thank you, Zoe.
Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you so much, Zoe and Andrea. Excellent, excellent session, and so many comments in the chat. There's one comment, however, that really jumped out at me, and I want to read it out loud. Here's what the comment says. I'm a manager of my language access team. I am English speaking only. I have always had great respect throughout my healthcare career for our interpreters. This exercise gives me even more respect for all of you. I failed this greatly, but I'm extremely impressed by all of your skills. So a testament to all the work that all of you out there are doing.